Leonov was lucky to escape with his life. He very nearly ran out of air in his struggle to re-enter the airlock, and by releasing the pressure in his bloated spacesuit, he also risked an attack of the bends. The return to Earth was just as traumatic. The automatic navigation system failed, so with Yuri Gagarin talking them down, they had to land the craft manually. During re-entry, the aerials burned off. The crew had no way of communicating with mission control. In fact, they were 1,000 miles off course and had to be rescued from a forest. They returned triumphant in the knowledge that a successful spacewalk had been achieved months before the Americans. Korolev welcomed back another hero of the Soviet Union, knowing how crucial this latest triumph was to the moon program. By the mid-60s, the Soviet manned lunar program was well underway. Yet today in this Moscow museum, there's nothing to suggest the existence of their most ambitious space endeavor. Only the hardware from their successful unmanned lunar probes is on display.
Before 1966, nobody knew what is the lunar surface like. Some scientists said that it is like stone. Some scientists said that it is very deep dust layer, maybe 3 meters. And we must design our aperture very good to all these surfaces.
Georgy Grechko helped to design a bouncing probe capable of settling on any kind of lunar terrain.
This big ball disappeared, and this small fall on the moon surface. Then these devices slowly go in this position, and because of these 4 feet motions, this device go strictly in the vertical direction, this axis, to send the signal to the Earth.
And could you tell us what happened to the first pictures the probe sent back?
Maybe it was not so good for us, but the truth is truth, and glasnost to glasnost. We had in that time a very big bureaucratic system, and when we have the snaps from the moon surface in our bureau, we give it for some small boss. The small boss give it for not so big boss, and then to big boss, to biggest, and this way was very long.
At Jodrell Bank in Manchester, Sir Bernard Lovell started picking up some strange signals on his radio telescope. Using a newspaper facsimile machine, he was able to decode the picture.
And Mr. Lowell from Jodrell Bank had these photographs in his in Jodrell Bank, and kept it 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and then he decided to send our pictures to your newspapers.
So the first pictures of the moon surface were published, not in Pravda, but in the Daily Express. Korolev never saw them. He died on the operating table at the age of 59. During his lifetime, he had been considered so important to the Soviet Union that officially he had never existed. Now that he was dead, he could receive the highest accolade, burial in the Kremlin wall.
For me, Korolev was the best scientist, the best designer, the best chief, the best man. When he was a chef of this designer bureau, we always were ahead of our American colleagues. Korolev was genius. Of course, one genius is much better than 1,000, maybe like me.
His successor would have to face some intractable problems. The battle lines between the rival rocket design groups were more entrenched than ever. The man who took over was Korolyov's deputy, Vasily Mishin. He inherited a moon program that had lost years of development because of political infighting over the N-1 moon rocket. But at last, the long-awaited Soyuz spacecraft, another vital part of the moon project, was ready to fly. This spaceship would be used for all future manned missions. The man selected for the maiden flight was Vladimir Komarov, who had commanded the dangerous three-man-in-a-pod mission.
Конечно, это очень мой хороший товарищ был, которому я очень доверял. Ну, в общем, он имел не только образование летчика, он имел образование инженера. Естественным образом на него и выбрал, так сказать, пал выбор быть первым испытателем Союза.
After Soyuz 1 was launched, it ran into problems as soon as it reached orbit. One of the solar panels did not unfold, so the ship's electricity supplies were too low. The planned rendezvous with the second Soyuz was cancelled, and Komarov was ordered home. The landing capsules separated, and he began his re-entry. He was slightly off course and spinning as he entered the atmosphere. To break the capsule on its descent to Earth, a drogue parachute was released, but the main chute became jammed. A backup was deployed, and because the capsule was spinning, the two chutes became tangled.
Но рывка ввода основной системы он уже не слышал, не мог ощущать то, что не было ввода и раскрытия основной системы. Он наверняка должен был зафиксировать ввод запасной системы, но продолжалось вращение, не быстрое вращение, но все-таки имело место, он мог его ощущать. Кончилось тем, что аппарат с большой скоростью, несколько десятков метров в секунду, врезался в землю, и Комаров погиб.
Komarov's fatal mission was the first under the new chief designer. This tragedy would set back the Soyuz program over a year. Gagarin, who was Komarov's backup on the mission, paid tribute.
Пламенного патриота, офицера-коммуниста, воспитанного Ленинской партией, замечательного товарища и верного боевого друга.
A year later, Gagarin himself was killed on a routine training exercise when his plane crashed in some woods. Leonov, who was an old friend of Gagarin, was asked to try to identify the shattered remains.
В Москве есть молодежная гостиница «Юность». И вот на протяжении многих лет мы, Юрий Гагарин и я, ездили в эту гостиницу подстригаться. У нас в Звездном городке не было парикмахерской. И вот накануне, после рабочей недели, в субботу, мы с ним поехали. Юрий сидит, его стригут. И я внимательно смотрю, как преобразуется его голова. У него была очень красивая форма головы. Ему делают скобочку, и на шее родинка. Мастер режет, стрижет, почищает бритвой. Я говорю, смотри, не срежь ему эту родинку. Я ее вижу, эту родинку. И вот, когда начали опознавать останки, то показали мне часть Юрия Гагарина, именно та часть головы и шеи, где была эта родинка. И если я до этого сомневался и не хотел верить,